this video, I'm going to show you one of the most frequently occurring opening mistakes in the advanced Caro-Kann and how to exploit it. So, let's get to our advanced variation. And bishop f5, still likely the best move. c5, the secondary option, has picked up popularity. You can find great example games with Grandmaster Keith Arkell if you're into studying these Caro-Kann positions. But after bishop f5, it still surprises me that I see moves like this by strong players. And I'm facing a 2400 rated player in this game. And this is the fourth choice move in the database, played over 8,000 times, with black winning roughly 10% more games than white. So by just statistical analysis, this is a fundamentally incorrect move. So let's understand why. It's bishop d3. You go, I'm challenging the bishop. If he captures me, I capture back with the queen, and I've accelerated my development. Well, that's only one part of the story. Let's think in terms of endgame now, with good bishop, bad bishop. In the French and Caro-Kann, the light square bishop for black is the bad bishop, because our pawns are stuck in the center, the same color as our bishop. So in every endgame, where it would say be light square bishop versus light square bishop, our bishop will only ever be able to defend our pawns. And much like in boxing, defense only is not going to win. So white is being very encouraging on move 4, saying, would you like to trade off your worst minor piece for my best one? Yes, absolutely. And now I follow up with, the light squares are weaker. The only thing covering it's the queen. Queen a5 check, followed by queen a6. And this endgame I am happy to play. So knight e2, and since I have done a couple of texts on the French, I'm of course very comfortable here, as this is a fixed French defense with the bishop gone, and I'm looking to play c5 shortly here. White castles, there goes c5, and now f4. Well, white's playing like there's still queens and their light square bishop on the board, playing for a kingside attack. f5 seems to be the plan, so let's take it away in the most effective way possible. I'm going to go knight e7. Knight e7 covers f5 with development and says, hey, if you want to take on c5 and help my other knight out, which is on the edge of the board, please feel free to do so. g4. This move is all about playing f5, but it's got another fundamental problem. We can undermine the g-pawn. How do we do it? h5. Now, we'd love to see a move like g5, as notice our pawn structure is getting more and more on the light squares, which is strengthening our remaining bishop and weakening the opponent's bishop for every endgame. Gotta love to see it. But my opponent plays h3. Okay? So if you're a pause your video type of person, here's a good moment. What's the most effective forcing way to continue play here? Black to move. All right, hopefully you started with capturing. No reason not to. Develops the rook, if you will. So what was the aggressive follow-up here? Rook h4. Get that newly activated piece into the game, hitting a target, encouraging the pawn structure to change as we want it, to strengthen our bishop in the endgame while weakening the opponent's. Rook f3 is played. Let's invite everybody to the party. Knight f5. And after a3, say, well, I could castle queenside, but I think the king is going to be better in this ending closer to the center and closer to the action. So I'm going to go king d7. And in the long term, I'm looking at the potential of getting my bishop out of the way, doubling rooks, and seeing if we can't make any tactics work once we have full use of that open H file. Knight d2. Well, let's continue with the plan. And white's trying to run, to his credit. So multiple champions have talked about this. It's the principle of two weaknesses. We got a little something going on the king side here, but we need to generate play elsewhere in order to get the job done. b5. Yet another pawn on a light square. And after bishop d2, let's improve our worst placed piece, as white is in a ball and everything is defensive. So I'm not in a hurry to make any radical changes or exchanges here, because I still have room to slowly improve, whereas my opponent, it's just a mess. Knight b8. Now after knight g3, I like keeping my pawn structure intact and don't have an escape. So let's go ahead and trade that. Now the natural follow-up, knight c6, placing pressure on d4, as well as getting ideas to potentially play a5 and either going a4 to cement squares or b4 at some point to undermine the chain. We have flexibility, so let's use it. Bishop e3, and now cd, followed by knight a5, where looking to hop in and utilize these light squares, shutting down the rook, hitting the b pawn, so rook c2. And now we've got the time. Use it. a6. And it's just, for me, in-game wise, it's aesthetically very pleasing to have my dark square bishop versus my opponent's dark square bishop. Compare all of the pieces. And this is not materially dominating, but every piece is better than its counterpart. The white rooks aren't doing anything. The white knight, especially the white bishop. All of our pieces have long-term great plans, though, and great position currently. Bishop c1, and you still can't even play like b3 here as the a-pawn's hit. Well, since you moved the bishop, let's look for some tactical ideas. I started off with rook h1. Now, there may be some threats with rook h2 at some point, but king g2 takes that away. Well, again, principle of two weaknesses. I started expansion on the queen side. Let's continue. And as this rook comes here, white dreams of being able to trade, but his problems aren't going to be over. Let's continue. Rook b3. And it's easy to just capture, but no. a4 followed by b3. Now, you were talking about gaining all the space. Why did you lock it up? Because in the long term, I'm going to be able to sacrifice one of my minor pieces, and the pawn is going to run free, making a queen, or in the very least, having my opponent sacrifice back the piece. Rook h3. Oh, happy to liquidate because this wins on the spot. b2. Knight takes. And now we've got a little bit more work to do. Thankfully, the white knight doesn't really have a route where it can get to our base pawn. I want to get the a pawn out of the way. But first, say A. Let's improve and knight c4. So this way there's no sacrifices and pushes of the d pawn, my king's going to get the d5 square if you consider taking. Knight b1. Now check. Knight c2. And I've figured out a way to get the king in as well as win a pawn by force. And after king e2, that one falls. Let's go knight b5, multi-purpose. Keeps an eye on any of the entry point squares of the white king, while at the same time anchoring that white knight in defense to the a3 pawn, giving me time to move the king with my passer, and in turn, white's going to lose ground and eventually lose more pawns. So this should be a very straightforward ending. King c5. And I do a little shuffle there in order to get opposition. There goes another one. And checking to check, which just improves my king's position to help usher the pawn forward. And the only thing better than one passed pawn is two, and not much can be done to stop the promotion. So hopefully this video sold you in the advanced variation why 4 bishop d3 is not good. It is fundamentally incorrect, as it is trading off a good bishop for a bad bishop, and especially if I can steer the game directly to an endgame with this queen a5 followed by queen a6, it's really hard for white to justify playing this, and it's why the statistics in the database show this is a great position for black.